your basic rule in Tai Chi is never to drop your body weight, always sink the body weight under the step. So from your normal starting position, drop all your body weight onto one leg and empty the other leg out. So now that it's just floppy jelly, nothing in it at all your weight's on this leg. And once it's jelly, vital breathe and then tune the fascia to life force in that leg. So just start stretching it until the leg is comfortable to easy to lift up without grabbing the muscles, where you just use the fascia. Once you've got that, then use that feeling of life force to transfer weight, and now it's flexible and stretchy. You can jump comfortably into the air, and it's loaded elastically. That's grounded. Dead weight without elastic jumping potential is not grounded, it's dead weight. So we want to have that there, and then we do it to the other leg. Empty, tune the stretch to life force so the fascia is active. Now I can step. Now, when you're at home, throw a bag of marbles on the floor, pick the marbles up with your toes and position them. Pick it up, and you can do this with pebbles. And wherever you can place the marble down, that's where you can place your foot. And you want to feel the ground and then drop the marble and drop your foot. And this sets up the length of your stance. Now, if I do this, I'm out of center. If there's any drop in my leg, I've lost my center of gravity, I've lost my base, I've lost my root. So you have to feel the ground, and then from under the ground, relax the contact point, relax the foot, relax the ankle, check the alignment, and then transfer weight onto it. Now this stance, I can move my weight forward and backward without clunkiness. I have to be able to jump at any time, as high as I can, and Tai Chi, walk like a cat. If you scare a cat, clap, what happens? The cat goes vertical. Every posture in the form, you've got to be able to spring at least past your knee height instantly, even a snake creeps under, for it to be usable. Okay, so we soften out, touch base, and then drop the hip, stretch the spine, and that's our stance. I don't want to go to there if I can't relax back and lift my foot off the ground. There I'm too long, it's clunky. I bring it back, now I can slide the foot slowly, I can feel the ground, that's my stance. The more advanced you are, the longer the stance will get, because I can sink down further, creep the foot out, feel the ground, move forward, and I don't have to throw my weight into this leg. I just simply empty and then lift the foot and go into the next movement. So if you draw a dotted line along the line of movement, you have to be able to change direction on any one of those dots without any clunkiness. So you end up with a small frame, you go to a medium frame, and as you get better, you go to a long frame, then you come back to medium and small frame as the internals, the micro movements get more refined. So lengthen the stance and then shorten the stance. If you start off with these long stances, you're going to hold tension in your legs, and your feet are going to be clunky, and they're going to stay that way for a very long time. If you look at the number one criticism you can do on 9 out of 10 Tai Chi masters is clunkiness in the legs. They're dropping their body weight rather than softening from under the ground. So if you fix this very early, you won't fall into that habit, because they learnt with a really long stance to start with, they're dropping their body weight rather than sinking the weight from under into the position. Now the reason why it's important for push hands is every time you drop the hip and stretch the spine, the person puts a force and you soften down. If you're in a stance that's too long, you're not going to be able to move the weight between the front leg and the back leg very efficiently. Even though, let's say from this stance and I go front leg, back leg, I'm moving the weight, but that leg can't empty. Here, it can almost empty. Here, there it is, now it's empty. So I can completely fill and empty one leg as you move forward and backward in the push hands. If you can't go all the way back and then have that empty, all the way forward and then that empty, without throwing your body weight, you've got to just clean that up right from the beginning. So start with a short stance and then lengthen, lengthen, lengthen as you go. And do the marble exercise, or just picking up pebbles and dropping them, and that'll fix people's dexterity with their footwork and make everything better. If you're doing MMA type stuff, then that that ability not to take too long of a stance means your leg checking is going to get very fast. Your kicking is going to get very fast because you'll have a fast twitch in the fascia that just lifts up and checks quickly. And never stretch your stance beyond that length of what you've mastered and in be able to empty and fill. Okay, so from there we have how wide of a stance do you want to work with. Now normally once you've got this there and you just put the knee in alignment with the toe, you draw a curve like this with your foot. Anywhere in there is how wide the stance would be. If you go to a shoulder width box on your kidney 1 points, it means that width that way and width that way is equal. You'll be in a place in which you've got strong forward force, you've got strong diagonal force, and you've got strong sideward force. The braces are there for all spherical directions, with the two empty corners being the weakest points. Now, if my leg moves towards the center line, say like Wing Chun, now my braces on the side are lessening, and I'm more vulnerable to these side directions. So if someone pushes me from the side, I don't have as much brace. For my foot a bit more square, I've got more brace. My groin becomes more vulnerable to groin kicks in front, but you have more structure. Okay, so the width is a shoulder width box from the kidney 1 points. And if you're very tall, you've got long legs and a short body, it's not shoulder width anymore. If you've got narrow shoulder width, it'll be wider than shoulder width. So you've got to adapt it to your body type as well. And use that same rule. Empty the leg, tune the fascia to life force, and stretch it out gently. That's as far as you're going to go. And then become comfortable in that shape. When you're doing the push hands, at any time, just vertically jump up into the air. So while I'm doing this, I have to be able to just do a kangaroo hop. Vertically up, off to the side, just to test that my legs aren't dead weighted. Dead weighted legs are terrible for martial arts. If you've ever been hunting and you're pointing a gun at a rabbit, if that rabbit's moving, you can't hit it. If the rabbit stands still, it's a dead rabbit. Same with your stance. And those of you, some of you have done security for years, if you stand still in front of an opponent, you're in trouble. You've got to move. And your footwork has to be really good while you're moving so you don't get taken out. So footwork is the most important thing as a foundation for martial arts. It controls distance, controls timing, controls can he hit me? No, he can't, I'm out of the way. Get your footwork as a base right from day one. Make it elastic so you can spring easily. No dead weightedness. Get rid of that completely. Now, grounding principles. Now, we've got a lot of different levels of energy awareness. Your first grounding principle is gravity, the ground. You relax and hang the muscles, open the joints, and just soften down to the ground through the fascia, so the fascia is sprung. You're aligning gravity, hanging muscles, tuning the fascia, and that's your first grounding, gravity. Your second grounding is life force awareness. So you take the consciousness of life force and soften into it. That means your space has to go well beyond the parameters of your body. So you ground inside the sensation of life force. Anything touches you, you connect it to life force and ground through it. Your next grounding is the chi, the astral body. When you slow the energy down and go into that swimming pool of energy around you, you ground yourself in that, not the ground. So if you look at videos of Master Ma Yuling, he's in the swimming pool of astral energy, of chi. And you can see his legs are up and he's not sinking into the ground. You look at Master Wong from the Wong Shin Chin lineage, he's going into the ground. You can see he's softening all the way down. His mind's in the earth, and he's energetically connected to the earth. So he's using gravity a lot more than, let's say, Ma Yuling. Both are correct. Now, when Patrick Kelly went to visit Ma Yuling, showed him a video of Master Wong, what was his criticism? He goes, oh, his bridge is way too short, because a short bridge gives you more vertical force. And then Patrick takes a video to Master Wong of Ma Yuling and goes, oh, his bridge is way too long. Opposing criticisms, because they're using a different route. And you can use a long bridge in the astral very easily, but you need a short bridge in the vital, because it's vitally more connected to the earth and gravity. And it's just a different route, needs a different body mechanical structure. So move from vital to astral. When you go to mental, it's purely being sensitive to balance, the relationship between your balance and your training partner's balance or your opponent's balance. You're sticking to that primarily, and you're opening that space up. So you're grounding yourself within the mental space and the frequency of balance. Different thing again. Those working with Akasha and light, you ground yourself in the quality of emptiness, or you ground yourself within the quality of light, if you're using that as a base. So we have 5 different routes, working from the physical through the astral, the mental, Akasha qualities, and light qualities. And to do the form, you can choose, are you doing the form vitally, astrally, mentally, akashically, or with light? And the form will look different on each one of those. Okay, so with your stance, shoulder width box, don't go too long. Keep it to shoulder width. Kidney 1 points. Just behind the ball is the markers for the 2 corners of the box. You can draw the curve and find that box. The knees, avoid drifting knees. So Gwen, your knee tends to do this a lot. So you want to keep the 2 triangles in the knee on the same plane. So from the kidney 1 to the ankle to the knee is 1 triangle. From the center of the hip, knee, ankle is a 2nd triangle. And those 2 triangles have to be on the same plane. So a lot of traditional people will push the front knee out, breaks the structure. And some people will push the back knee out, breaks the structure. So pull these 2 triangles in, and the test is to jump. You push your knees out, you can't jump. You align your knees correctly, you maximize vertical liftoff. You can move like a cat. So always look at those knee positions. And there's a certain amount of drift to the big toe when you're doing an inward spiral, and a certain amount of drift to the small toe when you do an outward spiral. But try not to go beyond that. So no Wing Chun pinning. If you pin, turn the feet in so the triangles stay aligned as you pin. If you have parallel and you do that, it's going to wreck your knees and your structure is going to be locked. Okay, so always keep those 2 triangles. The hip. Now there's this idea of filling the hip with water. And when you fill the hip with water, and you tilt too far forward, it's going to spill out the back. You go too far back, it's going to spill out the front. So generally you want to keep it quite level. Now some people say tuck the tailbone under and forward. That'll create tension in your quads. So you want to drop the tailbone down so the quads release. And everybody has a different point of release, so that angle is going to be different for each person. If you swing the tailbone back, the body's going to naturally become more magnetic, and if you swing tailbone forward, the body's going to be a bit more electric. Like if you push a car, you're going to engage more forward, and if you're in a tug of war, you're going to rock everything more back. And look at which places are strongest for your alignment. Your lower back should have a slight inward curve to it. Avoid pushing the Ming Men out. This inward curve of the lower back, some people say, push that out. You're going to get back problems. Don't push the Ming Men out. So the inward curve you've got to honor it. The midpoint of the scapula, just hollow that out slightly. Some people say pluck the back and they have this effect. That's going to float you, and it's going to give you a dead weighted hanging bridge. What you want is to be able to round the back without rounding the shoulders. So I don't want this to happen. I want to hollow the chest, round the back, but keep the shoulders relatively squared. If I hollow the chest and round the shoulders, then automatically my back starts rising and my base will start getting disrupted. And the only way to do this is to have a person feed force onto you from the vertical, and then they slowly increase the angle from that to forward angles until you reach horizontal. And each angle neutralizing force, you make small changes in your chest, upper back, shoulder to receive that force. When we're doing these exercises, most of the forces are either straight down, you touch and then you're on your partner's base, and then we come under and forward. So we go down and then on a curve. So if your partner lifts your shoulder up for you, as you open and create space, there'll be a rise. But you never lift your shoulder yourself. You let them lift it and you let them stretch you open, and then you counterbalance it automatically. The point on the hollow of the top of the neck, hollow of the connection point there, most people say to tuck the chin until that pushes out ever so slightly. If it suits your body type, just tuck the chin in and stretch that, that point out. What it does, any force that's on your body goes to the ground. So the way we train this, we get one of the iron palm bags, and let's put it on your training partner's crown. So okay, walk down the room and just tilt this forward and backward till you find the place in which force travels straight down to the ground, and you just walk with it. And if you do this, oh, that hurts. If you do that, oh, that hurts. But in the middle, there's a place in which mass transfers down. That's the right place for your neck and crown to be aligned. It's where energy travels down most efficiently. Everybody, that's different. So you can't use the same rule for every person. If a person's got a longer neck, a shorter neck, the rules change. So the muscles going across here change the alignment as well. The tension points change. So the person's got to go to the place of the greatest strength, work from there, and align, and stay in the place that's strongest. The strongest place changes. So once you're in that strongest place, you just make those adaptations and slowly soften, relax, release, always staying in the strongest place, which is constantly evolving and shifting. It's not constant. It doesn't stay, this is the strongest place. Because as your body releases, all the muscle alignments change, and hence the body alignment changes as well. So go to the strongest place and release, and just keep doing that, and you'll make your own correct bodily inches for your Tai Chi. Okay, so we'll do the 7-point body push just for a couple more minutes. We don't want to go over 1 hour per push-down set. After we've gone through 30 hours, the last 10 hours is connecting those sets together, jumping from one set to another. All right, partner up, 2-3 more minutes, and then we'll change.